everybody, it is Wednesday, it is June the 26th. Oh my gosh, by next week we'll be in July. Where has this year gone to? And we've got an amazing show for you today. This is The View from the Top. I'm your host, Brian Friedman, and today I am so excited. We have with us the chair-elect of Worldwide ERC, Mark Burchell, and we're going to be talking about to mobility and beyond. We're going to be talking about what's going on in ERC world, the future of mobility, all the things that are really relevant. And obviously ERC is so important to all of us in this industry. It's going to be just great to hear Mark's perceptions and the way that mobility and indeed ERC is changing. Loads of great people in our audience today. I see we've got our old friend Ray Abbott is here from Tippett Richardson from Vancouver, Bindu's all the way from Hyderabad. We've got Tanya Maritini, of course, a fellow board director at ERC, and indeed she will be a guest on our show in just a few weeks' time. People coming in from all over the world, which is just wonderful. Now, you know how it works. Everybody, please join in the conversation, write in the comments box, tell us who you are, what's going on, where in the world you are. We want to engage with you as much as possible whilst this show goes on. So please do let us know who you are, where you are, and we'll just give you as many people a shout out. We see Stephanie's coming in from Philly. Of course, we got Mark backstage. We got Erin Goff, one of our change makers. People coming from all over the world. Now, by the way, I've mentioned ERC, but of course, a lot of people do want their credits. So we got credits, we've got GMS credits, CRP credits, which our good friends at ERC give you, and the credit is there. But of course, people do get CPE credits from other places. There's HRCI credits, there's SHRM credits. So if you want any of those credits, we'll leave that running there for just a minute or two. If you want to make a note of those credits, then just jot down the relevant code number and make sure you use it, or alternatively, just screenshot it or get your camera out and take a quick photo. As Amber said there, thanks to everybody, thanks to Mark for representing ERC. We'll get on to that in a short moment. Next week, I'm very excited. We're going to be talking about employee experience and what we can all do to enhance employee experience. So again, really, really important subject we've got next week. What about this week? What's been happening over the last 7 days? One of the things we always like to do is just to share with you a little bit about breaking news, what's been going on in the wonderful world of global mobility over the last 7 days. Well, I'll tell you what, let's take a look. What's been going on in mobility in the last 7 days? So there we have it. A lot of people have been promoted, have moved job. Congratulations to all of you who have been promoted or moved a job. By the way, if you do have a job that you want to post and publicize, then let us know. We'll make sure we publicize it. And actually, I'll give a shout out to two of those jobs. I see Snowflake, where the program is led by Sarah Cullen, who's one of our change makers. They are hiring, and also eBay. And I know Tanya Maritini is in our audience today, and she's hiring. And I'm sure if you send in your details, then hopefully that's the role that you can be considered for. But also, if you are yourself, you've moved job or you've been promoted, then let us know, and we'll very happily give you a shout out on the show in a future week. So congratulations to everybody. Congratulations to Arpin for winning the Relocate Global Award for ESG. And we've got Mark Burchell from ERC, who in his day job is also with Arpin. So all of that coming up later. Let's move on to talk about immigration. Okay, that's our next topic. And as ever, I'm very excited to say we have with us Julia Onslow-Cole. So you know how it works, everybody. Please, to say welcome and indeed thank you to Julia Onslow-Cole for giving us her weekly immigration update. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button, and let's say a big hello to Julia Onslow-Cole. Hey, Julia, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Very well.
Good. Okay. Now, I always ask you this question every week. Whereabouts in the world are you today?
I'm in Cornwall today. It's beautiful, very sunny.
Lovely, lovely. And I'm taking it's not Cornish immigration you're going to be talking about. So
no.
Where in the world are we going on our immigration update?
I'm going to do a very high level LATAM update because we haven't covered the LATAM region.
Indeed, yeah.
But this is a kind of high level bird's eye view of the whole of the LATAM region. And then later on, I think in the coming weeks, I might do particularly on Mexico. I'm going to be in Mexico in September. I think I'll do a deep dive into some particular countries, but I wanted to give everyone a kind of flavor of what's happening in Latin America. I wanted to give a big shout out to my Fragaman colleagues, Leo, Laura, and Miguel, because they've been really helpful. But the first thing to say is that recent political events in Latin America and also in the Caribbean have significantly impacted immigration policies. So I think that's the first thing to say. And there has been an awful lot of political upheaval in the region. So what happened was that in Ecuador, and everyone will be aware that in Ecuador's been pretty volatile over the last few months, but the government in Ecuador raided the Mexican embassy in Quito, and obviously that's quite a huge momentous thing considering diplomatic immunity, etc. And Mexico and Ecuador have suspended their diplomatic relations since that incident. And also Venezuela has closed its embassy and consulates in Ecuador in solidarity. And then Mexico has revoked visa exemptions for people from Peru due to irregular migration.
Gosh.
And also we have, as everyone knows, we had the elections in June. Claudia Sheinbaum, the left-wing politician, she's won the presidential election, and so there is, a big focus on Mexico. Will they impose more visa requirements to control irregular migration? And as I say, I will be there in September, and I will be giving a really deep dive from Mexico then. And by that time, we'll have a lot more information and a lot more ideas. Then the Dominican Republic has stopped issuing visas from people from Haiti and closed its borders to them. And Peru has just introduced a new decree to tighten its immigration system. And then at the end of last week, only a few days ago, Ecuador completely revoked visa exemptions for Chinese nationals traveling to Ecuador for business or tourism. And that's effective from the 1st of July.
Can I ask why?
Sorry?
Why? Do we know why?
Because they are concerned about irregular migration. They're concerned that the people coming from China are irregular migrants and they're not coming genuinely for purposes of business or visit. But, you know, holistically, and I've just literally been, there's a lot of extra things I can say, but you can see how this has really impacted immigration. On the positive side, we do expect over the next 12 to 18 months some progress. And that's because, you know, geographically, LATAM has got lots of advantages. It also has a very skilled workforce. And as we know, because the US is moving away from China and having a sort of nearshoring policy, Mexico has actually surpassed China in the spot of the #1 trading partner for the USA. So
Wow.
obviously it's really benefiting now from this nearshoring and foreign direct investment. Now, you can't do that without really good business immigration reforms. So we are hopeful that there will be some good business immigration reforms, even though there is this underlying concern in the region about things such as irregular migration. And finally, just to say that other positive initiatives in the region, there's now a digital nomad scheme in 15 countries in LATAM, and including, we expect Peru to join shortly. And Brazil has proposals to facilitate visas for the green economy investments, and also has an agreement with China on visa validity. And Uruguay has just issued a new UK-Uruguay youth mobility scheme. So overall, we do have this sort of mixed picture, political volatility, but really, you know, good underlying factors here. And so what we're hoping is that governments will take timely action and really enhance the competitiveness of the region by some good immigration reforms.
Wow, that's really fascinating. And I saw an interesting comment from Jorge Flores. He says, LATAM is always in a constant dynamic change, especially in immigration. And then I think the final word must go to Rob Zeitz. Let's just pull that one up there. In terms of Cornishing immigration would have been just silly. So I think pun of the day goes as ever, I think, to our good friend of the show, Rob Zeitz. So Julia, thank you ever so much for that update. That was really fascinating. And as you said, we haven't covered LATAM for a while, and those are some pretty major changes and positive changes that it sounds like it's all going on. So thank you very much for that. We're now going to move to talk about tax. And in fact, our focus on tax is going to be on the UK with the upcoming elections there. And I'm super excited. We have Julie Barron and Sarah Hewson from Vialto Partners waiting backstage. So we're going to call them up onto our stage. Hopefully you know how it works. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button. Let's say a big thank you to Julie Onslow Cole and a welcome onto the stage to Julie Barron and Sarah Hewson. Julie, Sarah, good to see you both.
Brian.
Julie, just give us some background. What are we going to be talking about today? And then I'll let you introduce Sarah.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about the UK election that's coming up very shortly and what that could mean for taxes for employers and employees and those kind of things. So what we think, of course, you never know what a politician's going to do, but what we think the politicians might do. Right, Sarah?
Okay, and the election is on 4th of July, which obviously is meaningful
I know.
to many people. Yeah. So, Sarah, over to you.
Many thanks, Brian. Yes, it's a touch earlier than a lot of us expected. We thought it was going to be at the back end of this year. So it was a bit of a surprise. The Conservative Party are the incumbent government, but current polls suggest that the Labour Party will win. It remains to be seen, however, how much they win by. Will it be a landslide? Will they even have a majority? Because that will have an impact on what legislation they will be able to get through Parliament. Tax is very much at the forefront of the debate and forms a major part of all of the parties' manifestos. And yes, I have read them all. Despite this, with one or two exceptions, much of what's being debated is unlikely to have a material impact for employers, including those with a mobile workforce. But one of those exceptions is the reference to the non-dom rules. So Labour have been very, very clear that they're going to abolish non-dom status once and for all, with very little detail on what that means. But the Conservatives had already announced that what's referred to as a non-dom kind of regime would be removed and replaced by another regime from April 2025. So what's the current regime? That those not domiciled in the UK can avoid UK tax on certain income and gains, non-UK income and gains in the first 15 years of tax residence if they don't remit it to the UK. That's going to change and be a much less generous regime, currently suggested it be restricted to 4 years. But one of the benefits will be, we suspect that UK individuals, as long as they've not been resident in the previous 10 years, would be able to benefit from that, but B, that you would be able to remit income into the UK, which would be great from an investment perspective from the UK. But we expect that will have a material impact on certain individuals who want to come to the UK. Aside from that,
can I ask on that, Sarah? Because obviously, and we covered this on a show before, the non-dom regime was changing anyway with the last budget, and it's being changed, but the new change is going to be tougher than the previous change, or is it going to be the same as the previous change?
That's what we're anticipating. So at the moment, there's some traditional rules. Labour have suggested that they don't like those, so they might become less generous. But there's very little technical detail on the previous announcements anyway. So actually, it's quite flexible for Labour to work with. We're expecting a budget probably in back end of September, early October, where we hope we'll get more detail and potentially some legislation, particularly as this is meant to come in April. So it's not a long time to kind of bottom out what the impact will be and all of the detail. As a general rule, both parties are suggesting they're not going to increase tax rates, but Labour have been very careful wording with that. So I think it's leaving open to potentially slotting in an extra rate at a higher level, but that remains to be seen. That could be quite impactful, especially for the higher earners. National insurance, the Conservatives are suggesting they'd get rid of it for individuals, but employer national insurance looks like it's staying, and that seems to be something that both parties are aligned to. The big divergence is really on worker rights. So whilst that's mainly employment law, there will be a big crossover with tax, because tax comes from worker status, and Labour is suggesting some big changes to worker status, which could bring more people into tax, and a big focus on kind of minimum wage and enforcing the minimum wage, so suggesting getting rid of age bands. So anyone on that lower earning, we could see a big cost impact there. Aside from that, nothing particularly material. Some suggestions with managers of private equity funds who get carried interest. The taxation on that is going to change, which will be quite impactful for those individuals, but not generically those outside of that. And then some further kind of further pay gap reporting on top of gender pay gap, and potentially beneficial, replacing the apprenticeship levy with a growth skills levy, which would be mean that businesses can use that for wider things. One wider thing would be the proposal for VAT and school fees. So those businesses that do fund school fees, that's going to be an extra cost for them to think through. What wasn't mentioned as part of the manifestos, but previously announced, is payrolling benefits becoming mandatory, which will be very impactful for a lot of businesses who aren't payrolling. And I suppose where you get to is whatever happens, changes are afoot, and there'll be a lot for business to think about, and probably not a lot of time to think it through.
Okay, so what we're saying, thank you so much for that, Sarah. So long story short is July the 4th, there's an election. The probability, according to the polls, is a change of government that day, or July the 5th. a budget probably in September time, and a new regime. No changes to headline rates is what they seem to be saying, but there will be changes to school fees, and there will be changes to the non-dom regime. So lots of stuff there to look at. It's going to be an interesting few months. It's been the first change of colour of government for I think 14 years. So it will be a major change if it happens. Sarah, Julie, thank you so much for being on the show. We're now going to move on, and we've got some exciting Benivo updates that we want to share. So everybody, you know how it works. Please hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button. Please say a big, big thank you to Sarah Hewson and Julie Barron. And let's welcome onto our stage the View from the Top's very own Dr. Tali Gorin. Hey, Tali.
Oh my, I haven't been called doctor for so long.
I know, Dr. Tali. You know what? I'm feeling a bit ill. Maybe you can sort of...
Let me check you out. But thanks for inviting me, Brian. Today I joined because tomorrow I'm going to meet my favorite global mobility people, and these are the change makers. So I'm really excited about it. It's going to be our quarterly call with them. And if you are a change maker watching the show and you didn't get an invitation, please let me know, because we're going to have a very exciting meeting tomorrow. We'll show some new exciting features, and we'll also have a discussion of some what kind of new technology you would like to see in the mobility. So that's going to happen tomorrow. This is really exciting for me. But in addition to that, if you remember, Brian, last week we talked a lot about benchmarking in global mobility. And as you know, we don't rest in Benivo. And this week we're sharing the results of another project, a series of interviews and surveys with mobility professionals from leading technology companies. What we did is we wanted to understand the scope and the variety of mobility support that they offer to their interns. So this is a really good report with a lot of insights about the practices and also the challenges that these big tech firms are facing when they manage their internship mobility programs. So if you want to read this report, then once I go off air, I'll be able to share the link, and please download it.
Okay, so that's a major new benchmarking report that's available on interns, in particular in tech companies. So it's pretty fascinating document if that's an area that is relevant to your area of practice, either because you're a corporate in that industry or you're a supplier to that industry. And it's available free to download. And Tali will be sharing the link in the next couple of minutes once she is backstage again doing her producer role. So we're now going to move on. I'm so excited. We have the chair. We've gone from doctor to chair. So we have the chair, or chair-elect rather, of Worldwide ERC, Mark Burchell, backstage. So without any further ado, everybody hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button. Say a big, big thank you to Dr. Tali Gorin, and a welcome to the chair-elect of ERC, Mark Burchell. Mark, great to have you on the show. Super excited for you to be here. So, Mark, for those who don't know you, who are you? Tell us.
Well, first of all, thanks so much for this opportunity. And coming today from Neptune Beach, which is northeast Florida, about 5 hours north of Miami.
I'm hearing not a Floridian accent there.
No, this is true. So originally from London, and kind of started in the business back in 1982, working for an American moving company in London. Ultimately transferred with a different American moving company from London to Fort Wayne, Indiana in 1991. And then was recruited by Sudduth to come down to Jacksonville, Florida in 97. I was here for 10 years and then was recruited to join what was Interdene under new ownership in 2007 in London, and stayed through the acquisition of Santa Fe, and was then ultimately brought back by Sudduth in 2016 to Florida, and then have been with Arpin since January of this year. So yeah, quite the journey.
Okay. Oh, and congratulations on that ESG award.
Well, thank you. Yeah, really proud of that. And, the team's done a fantastic effort with all of the kind of initiatives that we've put into getting that award. So really, yeah, it was a fantastic achievement. Thank you.
So that answers the question that Melanie Klashka put up there, I think, tongue in cheek. Who is Mark Burchell, she's saying. Well, now we all know. Well, let me ask, if that was a dumb question, let me ask the next dumb question. Okay. What is WERC? Let's just assume that somebody out there has never heard of Worldwide ERC. What is WERC? Tell us the story.
Sure. Well, it's kind of morphed over the years. And as you know, or perhaps you don't, that this will be the 60th anniversary of the
organization. This year. Happy anniversary.
Thank you. Yeah, big occasion, lots of celebrations. And certainly we'll come on to the event in October, the GWS, but a lot of, things will be happening and celebrated at that conference. But yeah, really back, started off as a small organization, real estate focused, and has grown into an organization that grew out of real estate, grew into public policy advocacy, and then ultimately into relocation, mobility, global mobility, and everything that's attached to it. So it's truly a worldwide organization.
And it was founded in 1964.
Correct.
And as a not-for-profit, presumably. I mean, I wonder if the guys who founded it sort of realized that it was still going to be going this strong 60 years later.
Yeah, and it's a balancing act that we're proud of, because obviously we have to generate income in terms of the things we put out and the initiatives that we support. But you're absolutely right, from a tax perspective, it's 100% for non-profit.
Yeah, I mean, a not-for-profit isn't the same as a not-for-revenue. So exactly. So I mean, and it is an amazing service that you offer the industry. So tell us a bit about, if you like, the services that you offer to all of us as mobility professionals.
Yeah, I think it hits a number of key elements. One, obviously, is the sharing of information. And we're currently working really hard with a new revamp of the website, so we can push information out and relevant information out and make it more accessible. I think a lot of the feedback we got from people was the website was a bit clunky and clumsy to get around. So the ability to bring the right and relevant minds to a particular discussion point and then create relevant information to share back out to the membership is a key part of who we are as an organization.
When will that go live, the new website?
It's scheduled for the summer, so certainly before the conference in DC in October. But the latest I understand from the team is it'll go live in the summer.
And I know it's hard to describe a website in words, but if I was to look at the website in, say, October compared to the website now, what would be the major differences I'd be seeing?
Well, I would say number one of what I've seen in sort of the boards that have been shown as sort of potential layouts to me, it's all in the navigation of the site. So it's a much simpler site that you can access quickly what you're looking for. And again, we did this based on the feedback we got from many of the members that in desperation, they'd hit the help button because they couldn't find the information they were looking for. So the team's really worked hard to reshape the website, make it easier to use, less clunky. And I think one of the things that Anupam has really brought to the organization is.
Sorry, let me stop. You mentioned Anupam, but tell us, because people may not know, just tell us a bit about who Anupam is. And
yeah, sure. So Anupam is the CEO. Anupam Singhal comes from a mobility tech background, force of nature. Really has the organization, lives, breathes, sleeps the organization, which we're very happy to have. And he's really, as probably you yourself been on a listening tour. Some of the listeners today may have had interaction with him. He's been to lots of regional events, not just in the US, but around the world, India, Singapore, the UK. So he's really, from that listening tour, brought back lots of the new initiatives that you're going to start to see come out of Worldwide ERC, because it's an organization of its members. And I think over a period of time, we sort of were focused more internally on what we wanted as an organization, and we stopped listening to what the members wanted and how the members wanted to learn and develop and interact with us. So he's really been a change agent for us.
Okay, and I had the privilege of meeting with Anupam just a few weeks ago, and yeah, I'm absolutely endorse what you say. Real force of nature, and I'm sure that all the changes that he's pushing through ERC or Worldwide ERC. No, it's rebrand, isn't it? It's WERC, I should be saying now. I've got to be on message here. WERC, all the changes he's pushing through seem very good. Now, if I look at it from an outsider's perspective, somebody obviously in the industry, but not within WERC, I would say that there was a time a few years back, WERC was really quite global in its outlook. Mm-hmm. And I think it retrenched a bit and became a bit more US-centric. And I'm getting the feeling that is now changing, and actually you're becoming more global again in your. Is that fair? Is that a fair comment? And how is WERC changing?
Yeah, I think first of all it's completely fair. I think we went through, as many organizations, associations, companies, individuals did, a tough time through COVID. Both physically, mentally, economically. And so we've come out of that with sort of a renewed view on what the global market means to an association like Worldwide ERC. And clearly, we had become a little too US-centric. The first change was then to bring more global perspective to the board. Obviously, we reset the CEO role, and Anupam is someone that has a global view. We have global board representation, and the strategy is about global growth. Doesn't mean to say we're going to ignore the home base of the US, but Worldwide ERC, I think also part of the story is stumbled a little bit. I've been to a few of the events that they tried to hold in the UK, and it was too US-centric. It wasn't attractive to the UK market. So we've unbundled lots of that. One of the key things that Anupam did in conjunction with Benny Tan, who's was a board member and created this APAC charter. So in effect, we now have a sort of a mini Worldwide ERC based out of Singapore, dedicated to the APAC region. They held their second successful event in May in Singapore, oversubscribed. It's really, I think, shows to me again that the world we live in today is moving at different speeds in different parts of the world, and what's relevant for one region isn't necessarily relevant for another. So the ability to have a focus on purely APAC was important. And alongside that, we went back to India. So we had our first conference in India for many years, again, oversubscribed, huge commitment to come back next year and continue to grow that market. So that's very exciting. And then with our kind of corporate series, we're looking to kind of get a foothold back in first of all, the UK market, and then grow from there. So you're absolutely right. This is 100% around global growth.
And by the way, out in the audience, if you've got questions for Mark, just put them into the LinkedIn comments and we'll try and make sure we ask those. But Mark, so how would you describe WERC's mission and vision at the moment?
Sure. Well, when you look at it fundamentally, it's about being the global authority. But I think authority is a bit of a strong word around talent mobility. we really want to focus on being the platform for the exchange of ideas, of networking. I mean, certainly there's some public policy advocacy in the US that we need to maintain. But I think really, again, I go back and perhaps overuse it, this for the people, by the people. It's about how can we engage the membership? You know, that's the front line of what is happening in mobility today. We want to be the platform that allows those members to have a voice, to bring current innovative thinking to the world of mobility. We often refer to it as an ecosystem, which I think is a pretty good way of all the satellites and moons that are all moving in the universe around talent mobility and how they interact with each other. And at the core of it is we want to be the platform that allows maximum engagement, maximum networking, and maximum opportunity to push information up and down and through the membership.
Okay, I want to get into an area that's quite niche, but I think quite important for people, especially people in the US. And that's this thing about buyer broker litigation.
Right.
I know, looking at your website, you know, you've got papers on it. I know it's something that WERC has been very actively involved in helping the relocation industry, because, and I'm not based in the US, so I'm not nearly as familiar with it as you would be, but I understand this is something that has potentially got quite serious ramifications for our industry and for RMCs. So just spend a couple of minutes, but can you just give a highlight on what is this issue around buyer broker litigation and why is it so important for WERC and indeed for our industry?
Yeah, good question. Well, fundamentally, the way real estate works in the US at a very high level is when you sell your home, you engage with a real estate agent to help showcase the home, put it on the multiple listing service, the MLS, kind of the window to potential buyers to see your home. And you engage in a contract with that selling broker for the sale of the home, which includes a commission. And that commission structure has always been negotiable. It was never set. But there was then sort of an agreement between the selling side and a buyer's agent who would come in that they would get a split of that declared commission. There was a lawsuit in the Midwest that claimed that was an anti-competitive practice. And better people than I can go into the actual mechanics of why they felt it was anti-competitive, but the lawsuit carried through and settlement was made. And so as of August the 17th, I believe, now the kind of transaction will be separate. So you'll have the existing arrangement with a seller's agent, but now the buyer will need to have their own buyer agreement. And what that will do is it will change the commission structure. And again, it's not relevant to talk about percentages, but what it means is now there will be a split and potentially a lowering of commissions available, fees charged on the buyer side. So overall, how this will impact, we think, because this is still a little fluid and ultimately be determined from the realtor RMC side of the business, there's potential for a reduction in the commissions collected or commissions available. And as such, that's going to flow through a whole range of these dominoes that are all connected. So I think ultimately people are going to have to think differently around their interaction when they buy a home and who they want to represent them and what services they want to be represented by through the buyer's agent. And then from the referral side of things, it's probably going to force RMCs, companies to think about, well, how do they support a transferee in this new environment that's now potentially got additional cost on the transferee side?
Because presumably, if they're not getting the commission, the RMC is not getting the commission, then they've got to make money somehow. So they'll then be charging fees to the corporate or to the end user client.
Yeah, and this is all in a backdrop of, in the US at least, a tough housing market with high interest rates and low supply on the housing side. So, you know, there's some very smart people that operate within these RMCs, and I'm sure they're already figuring out the models. And that could be based around the types of policies that people now move under in this new environment. The fee-for-service model is probably going to become more in vogue. So, it's a fundamental change, and I think Worldwide ERC did a good job helping collaborate with, some of the realtor community, the National Relocation Directors group, and really being, again, this platform that allowed the sharing of information so people could be as informed as they could. There might be slight variances state by state about what such a contract on the buyer side might look like, and that's all to play out. But you're right, it will have a fundamental change on the relocation market for sure. Okay. And would this be more likely to affect the larger RMCs, or will it be the smaller ones? I think it'll be across the board, and it's not for me to talk about the cost infrastructure of the larger RMCs and what that might be compared to a more boutique sort of relocation management company. But companies are going to have to think about their policies. They're going to have to think about their RMC relationships. But I'm sure some of those conversations are already taking place, because ultimately there's still a role for an RMC. It's just probably that the pricing model is going to be slightly different. And we've got a comment from Drew Phillips. I've been interested to see what your comments on this. Drew says, it is a decoupling of the commissions. Excuse me. Now sellers pay listings agents and buyers will pay the buyer's agent. Actually, it's really good for buyer's agent as they now dictate their value. RMCs have work to do to support their network of brokers, their clients and prospects. Change is good. Let's go. So is this good change, or is this bad change, or is this just change? Yeah, I think it's change, and it depends on who you are and where you are and what your role is as to whether it's good or bad. But I think there are several knock-on effects, to Drew's point, to be fair, that might see, some new real estate type companies coming back into the market that sort of went away when high interest rates came through. So, there's going to be disruption without question. But I don't think we've seen how it's going to manifest itself in the market just yet. And again, I'm sure our RMC colleagues are all working hard to think through what that might mean. But it's really going to be on a per client basis, because you've also got the dynamic of the fact that more and more companies are moving to non-traditional policies to support relocation and mobility. So you're seeing, you talked about it on the show last week, I thought it was excellent, with Ellen, around, managed cap, lump sum, cash allowances, points-based programs. Flexibility and choice are the watchwords of relocation policies today. So from a Worldwide ERC perspective, our job again is to get the right minds around the table, listen to all the moving parts, and then put that information back out to the membership. Okay, so let's move on. We've talked about one area in which mobility is likely to change, or is going to impact our industry, which is buyer broker litigation, which obviously is quite a niche area. But let's just take the bigger picture. How do you see, or what do you see of the evolving mobility landscape? Obviously we're in times of huge change, geopolitically, technology-wise, all sorts of different ways. What do you see the big changes are going to be over the next, say, 3 to 5 years? Yeah, good question. Well, technology has to be number one for me, and indeed for me, I've got a Benivo hat too. Well, we live and breathe technology. Yeah. Well, a well-planted question. Excellent. Yeah. No, I listen. I think that and again, smarter brains than me can give comment to this, I'm sure. But I think AI and what AI will do to disrupt mobility and talent, we haven't seen the full extent of that yet. And for me, I'm as interested more around companies like Databricks and Snowflake, I guess others, that take a company's own data, both structured and unstructured data, and create models that then give the kind of predictive analytics around, well, how will you optimize mobility in the future? And I think the work there, my personal belief is, I'll be interested in your perspective on this, is that we haven't truly seen that come into mobility in a wholesale fashion. I think it's impacting businesses on research and development, and probably if you're in biotech or technology, it's leaps and a long way ahead of where we are from a HR and a mobility perspective. But the future is going to be how companies, certainly big companies that have data points in the thousands and millions, how these companies are able to create models that then create a different dynamic in how you identify the talent, the services you provide to that talent, the likely outcomes of the talent being relocated. That's all fascinating work for me that I hasn't yet, I don't think, impacted mobility. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we'll move on from just from technology in a moment, but let's just stick with technology because it is such an important area. I mean, as I said, with a Benivo hat on, we live and breathe technology, and the changes that we're seeing just in the last 18 months or so have been dramatic. I mean, certainly our technology is trained not just on information that's available publicly, like tax information, immigration information, but it's trained on companies' own policies and procedures. So you can then say, okay, this is our company, we want to write a new policy, but in the language of our existing policies, or fitting in with our culture, but we want a new policy that deals with whatever the new, we talked about interns earlier, whatever the new sort of, the subject is.
Yeah.
The other thing is that, a lot of people do surveys to find out how people feel. Surveys, in some ways, are going to start disappearing because surveys are always out of date. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we use, and which I'm sure will become much more widespread, is the concept of sentiment analysis. And sentiment analysis is, if you imagine somebody has read your emails before you have, and next to your email is a green smiley face or a red grumpy face or a yellow neutral face, so that even before you've read it, the machine has read the tone of it, and then you can then use that to do predictions. So, for example, if you're an RMC and you've got a supply chain, or you're corporate, you've got a supply chain, you can start seeing, all the emails that come in regarding supply partner A have got green smiley faces, and all the ones that come in for supply partner B have got red grumpy faces. Then something is happening, a prediction, even before anybody has actually complained or done a survey. It's just read the tone of the email. Mm-hmm. And then you can start doing the predictions. I mean, other things certainly that that I talk about, when and Benivo will talk about, is the fact that we get better technology in our everyday life than we do in relocation. That I order a pizza and I can see where it is from oven to door. I can't see that with my application for a visa or a tax return or shipping. I can't see that, and I can't do the predictions. And all of that is changing, and certainly the Benivo model changes it, and I'm sure that will be the rest of the industry fairly soon. So yeah. Everything there is changing. But let's go on more than just technology. What about geopolitics? How's that going to affect mobility over the next few years?
Yeah, well, I guess the real answer is we don't know, right? Because the friction that is being created geopolitically around the world has, again, many touch points. Just what Julie was talking around and what's happening in South America right now. There's a knock-on effect to that. And clearly there are parts of the world that people are reluctant to relocate to and from in the traditional sense. So I think that the geopolitical influence on immigration is interesting. And I think the technology impact and influence on immigration will be interesting in this 3 to 5 year span, as anything that's truly rule-based, and a lot of immigration is rule-based. Well, how much will that be overtaken by technology and driven and managed by technology? I think that's really interesting. And I think for me, on a personal level, I get the sense that the world of mobility, the ecosystem, is talking more about the social well-being, mental health of people that are impacted by mobility. And I was really interested in the, Lynn, I think you had the lady on from Pivot.
Lynn Greenberg.
Yeah. I think that is becoming more of the conversation. So I thought it was very relevant that you had her on. And I just think people and companies are going to start to pay more attention to the mental welfare, the social well-being of the family units that become impacted by not just the traditional relocation, but, you know, work from home, work from anywhere, hybrid working. I think the social well-being of individuals is going to be something that's going to impact mobility in the next 3 to 5 years, and rightly so, in my opinion.
Okay, so let's move on. Let's go back to WERC itself. I mean, WERC is a force for good in our industry. I mean, it has been for 60 years, and hopefully it will be for another 60, if not more, that it will be carrying on way after all of us in the audience have retired. It'll be, you know, it'll be going from strength to strength for many, many years. But my question is this: it is a force for good. What can we do, and that is everybody around the world in mobility, to support WERC? It's such a good thing you do. What can we do to help?
Well, thank you for saying that, first of all. And I suppose the number one thing would be get involved, be involved. There are multiple committees working.
How can we get involved?
And certainly through the website, or happily, you know, come through me or Anupam if you personally want to get more involved. So I think involvement is the number one, and we view the committees, and actually as a board, we have challenged the team to get more structure and rigor around the committees and the working groups, because 250 plus volunteers dedicate all of their personal time to the work that is involved in these groups. And our message from the board was, we want to see more output, formal output, so that we can place greater value on the work that these teams are doing. And what I mean by that is because that's the leading edge of mobility, right? These are the people we want to be able to feed the growth of the organization, ultimately shape where the organization focuses its time. And these volunteers are the real heartbeat of the organization. So from a board perspective, our challenge to Manupam and his team is more structure, more rigor, bring more people into these groups, more formal report outs. And I suppose in a way it does create a talent pool of potential future leaders of committees, groups, potential board members. But that's a great way to get involved. Obviously, we want you to attend the events, but there's webinars, podcasts, and of course, contribute to articles. You know, all of these things are areas and opportunities for increased engagement with the organization, because again, it's for the membership, and we want you to feel like you're contributing to your fellow members and encouraging new members to join. That's really the ask. Okay, and let's talk about events. I mean, the big one is the one in October, which is in DC this year, I believe. So tell us a bit about GWS. For somebody who hasn't been, what should they expect and why should they go? Yeah, well, it's changed and morphed and ebbed and flowed over the years. And I think, again, I give credit to Anupam. This listening tour he's done has really shaped the new version of what we're going to see at GWS. And you know, it was a tough kind of environment to be in, because you've got to create this conference that meets the needs of a really diverse group of people that attend. You have some very, very senior mobility leaders, actually some very senior HR leaders that come to the conference, and their wants and needs are very different from an entry-level first-timer into mobility HR and just learning. And how do you put on a conference that meets the needs of that population? So what we've done is really we've tried to change the emphasis to being, and again, I think this is credit to Anupam, rather than it being previously kind of, well, this is the show Worldwide ERC wants you to have. It's turned itself around and said, well, what are the things you want? And so the working committee, the content committees, the session committees, these are all made up of members. It's not the board, it's not the leadership at Worldwide ERC.
And how many people would you be expecting to see at GWS this year?
We should get, I would hope, somewhere in the 1,500 mark, something like that. So, we've already we're on pace to beat last year's conference. I think the National Harbour is a great venue. It's a good space. And what I mean by that, it's a great space for collaboration, networking. But the sessions are designed, you can really design your own conference. So you can pick the streams you want to go in. There are certain streams that are invitation only, and that's based on either a subject matter or seniority. So you can really pick and choose and build a conference schedule that meets your exact needs and what you're going to a conference for, beyond the networking and the ability.
You mentioned network. I know, and actually I appreciate time is now getting very short, but I know GWS is also famed for its after parties as well, and all the stuff that goes on around it. So tell us a bit about, if you like, the side shows that are going on too, and the fun aspects of it all.
Yeah, well, and part of the friction previously has been, a lot of our supplier sponsor partners, rightly so, want to have their own events and celebrate the relationships with their customers. And, we've tried to embrace that and make everyone feel that this is their conference. Yes, we have some activities that we push and promote that are WRC activities. The foundation has their big gala party during the event. We encourage everyone to sign up and donate and participate in that. So you're right, the networking is a big part of the event, and we encourage that. And we want to make sure there's enough time built into the schedule for people to do that.
Okay, we've got 3 minutes left, or in fact less, 2 minutes left, but there's one subject I just want you to touch on very, very quickly, which is education. Every week we put up about the GMS and the CRP qualifications. Give us like the 60-second version of that, and why is that so important?
Yeah, well, you're right on message there, Brian, because from a board perspective, a lot of the sort of strategic thinking we did around, well, what's the value proposition of Worldwide ERC? And it was exactly that. It was around development, education, learning. And again, we felt like perhaps the old model was a bit clumsy, it was a bit slow to market. Was it really relevant? So the team, the operations team under Anna Palmer, have really been working hard to rethink what learning and education should mean in 2024 and beyond, because we really see that as a cornerstone of our kind of USP. What makes Worldwide ERC who is it today? What value can we bring? And it's creating relevant learning opportunities through the right kinds of engagement, all the way from high context testing down to bite-size, small bits of information that we can share. Learning and development is a very important part of who we see us being today, but more importantly, the direction of travel for the future.
And if somebody, we've got a minute, if somebody wants to do a GMS qualification or CRP, how do they go about doing it? Yeah,
go to the website, even though the website currently is a little clunky. Actually, that's an area, both GMS and CRP, you can find easily. You can see when the courses take place. There's actually lots of people that do sort of training sessions, coaching classes. There's a whole community and network around that. But the website would be where I would tell you to go. And if anyone that is listening today has any additional questions, then feel free to contact me directly. I'll find the right person to link you with. But it's a key part of who we are and who we want to be in the future.
Okay, so we're now going to, let me just bring back our wonderful producer, I think, and I think we've got Julia back, but our friends from Vialto both had client meetings, so we don't have Sarah or Julie. So as we come to the end of the hour, Mark, it's been amazing having you on the show.
Thank you.
I think the way that ERC is changing is just tremendous, and certainly I speak for myself and hopefully everybody in the industry in wishing you all the best, because I think it benefits all of us to have a really strong and powerful ERC. As Karen Bannon said, thank you, Mark, for the updates on WERC and your thoughts on the future of the organisation. So
thank you, Karen, and thank you, Brian. I appreciate that.
Appreciates that. Again, Julia, thank you very much for your LATAM update. In absentia, we thank Sarah Houston and Julie Barron for their UK tax update. And as Tally has just reminded us there, we are back next week for a wonderful show. And this is such an important subject. It's always important. I think it's more important than ever at the moment, about enhancing the employee experience. This has been The View from the Top. I've been your host, Brian Friedman. Thank you to everybody in the audience who's been with us today. And we look forward to seeing you all again next week for next week's edition of The View from the Top. Take care, everybody, and have a great, great week.
Thank you.
Bye.